Welcome in, and thank you so much for joining us for our 43rd episode of YCP's virtual monthly series, Refiner's Fire, where Catholic business leaders from diverse industries share professional and spiritual wisdom in short 30-minute live sessions. In spite of the short length of these segments, we hope that the tips and insights will be extremely powerful for all of us as we strive to work and witness for Christ. Now, the name of our micro interview series, Refiner's Fire, it actually comes from scripture, from Malachi chapter 3, verse 2, where we learn that God is like a refiner's fire who seeks to purify us and make us the best that we can be. And that's the whole point of this series at the end of the day. Through the inspiration and wisdom of these exceptional Catholic leaders, we are challenged to improve in small ways in our professional and spiritual lives. So let's be open to this journey of refinement together so that in everything we do it aiming for that higher standard of excellence that gives glory to God. So our topic for this month, we'll be diving into extreme ownership with your career. Every step counts. Dan is going to give us some career advice and share how you can take charge of your career by owning every step for greater success and fulfillment. And Dan is the president and chief executive officer at SRS Distribution. And welcome in, Dan. We are very blessed to have you with us today.
Yep. Thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know I want to dive right in. And I know a lot of our audience listening in today, are a lot of young adults in their first or second job, or even being a manager or leader for the first time. So I wanted to ask, could you give some practical advice on how you went from being, an entry-level employee to a CEO, and really how the mindset of extreme ownership helped you get there throughout those years?
Yeah, sure. So, well, it all starts kind of right out of college. So I went to Catholic school all my life, went to a Jesuit high school in Dallas, and then went to Texas A&M for undergrad. And then, so I started my career journey right out of undergrad, got to work for an amazing company, an amazing CEO. But I think, I'll even start there. It really matters for those of you that are really new into the workforce. It really matters what company you choose to work for, what industry, what size of company, and more importantly, what boss. I would tell you that people don't work for companies, they work for people. And that's the bottom line. And that will be true your whole career. So people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. They leave bad bosses usually. So the first advice I think I'd share with the group is never, ever work for a bad company. And even more importantly, never, ever work for a bad boss. If you find yourself with a bad company or a bad boss or a bad situation, you can navigate out of it. It doesn't mean you have to quit your job and give up your livelihood. There are ways to navigate left and right, even horizontally in the same company, to get out from under a bad situation, a bad boss. Now, if it's a bad company, that's a whole different scenario. But you still need to feel confident that you can say, I'm going to start looking for something different. I always tell everybody that works for us, if you don't wake up every morning excited to come to work, something's wrong. Your career is not going as well as it should. Don't live in a world that you think a career has to be drudgery or not fun. If you don't, literally, we say in our company, if you don't want to get a speeding ticket on the way to work, not on the way home, something's wrong. Like literally, that's very important. You've heard the adage, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Certainly, that has been my career success for 28 years. Now, as you say, how do you make it from the entry level all the way to the C-suite? I think not everybody wants that, but if you do aspire to be promoted and to have a career journey that means you're moving upward and onward, you have to be premeditated in everything you do. Everything matters. Your brand, your reputation, and your name is your brand in a company and a career. And every single thing you choose to do, whether it's who you go to lunch with, whether you come in earlier than your boss or stay later than your boss, whether it's how broad your experience is, whether you're willing to volunteer for a project, take on a risk, do something new in the company you're not maybe comfortable with, to throw yourself into the deep end of the pool. All those things, if you're trying to get promoted and what I call in danger of being noticed by your superiors, there's things you have to do that are intentional. But I guess the best message I can give you is your career is your fault. It's not your company's fault. It's not your boss's fault. Your career is your fault. It's whatever you choose to make of it, because there are no rules that say you have to stay anywhere. There's no rules that say you have to stay on the same path. And you can be proactive, and you should be proactive. You shouldn't wait for your boss to come to you with a promotion. You should already know what are the opportunities I have that could be next up the ladder in my company. And if they're limited, can I do to make them less limited? What skills do I need that you think I don't have yet? Whether that's more education, whether that's mentoring, whether it's a new skill set, whether it's taking a professional development class, or just being around and exposed to other people in the company, or getting on projects that get you to be noticed, more valuable, and be more top of mind when people are sitting in a room saying, who should we promote into that next role? So I benefited greatly from being proactive in my career, being intentional with the risk I took to throw myself into lots of new projects. I certainly set a work standard that I tried to beat my boss into work, and I never tried to leave until he was already gone, right out of college. And that built the brand, built that reputation that I certainly leveraged. And the other thing I think a lot of young people forget trying to move up is the number one reason young people don't get promoted a lot of times is because they tend to be, rightfully so, a little insecure in their new role. And they don't want to surround themselves with really talented people because they feel like, well, now I'm competing with more talented people. That may make me look a little weaker and I don't get promoted. But I can tell you, I got promoted most of the time in my career because my bosses knew that I already had somebody, a successor, that could do my job better than I was currently doing it. So they felt comfortable moving me up, knowing I wasn't vacating a spot that made the company weaker. So succession planning, once you get the chance to lead other people, I'm a huge fan of hiring the best people, the brightest, the talented, and then motivating them, and then getting them to be ready to take your spot so you can move up again.
I love that. And there's so many gems in, I think, what you shared there. And I think one of my favorite lines that you had also shared, I had never heard it before, but excited to kind of get a speeding ticket on the way to work versus on your way home. I think that's really awesome. And I think there's a couple other key phrases that I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper on. I think just understanding and really the ownership around, like, your career is your fault, you setting this high standard for yourself and where you want to be. But also even like having the self-awareness of understanding, is the Lord guiding me to a C-suite position? Like, are there specific gifts and talents that he blessed me with that is just, I'm just going to be mid or senior level management, not because I'm settling there, but because that's where he's called me to be. So I'm curious in your life, Dan, that as you've gone through your own prayer and discernment process from going to entry level to where you're at now, a two kind of piece question. One, just as we talk about great bosses and great CEOs to go work for, what have been some of the things that, you look for in a potential boss? Because I know there's a lot of people listening that want to know, like, what are the things that I should look for a leader I want to go work for? And then also, too, what type of self-awareness did you have knowing, like, I know that there's specific gifts that the Lord blessed me with, and he's actually calling me to the C-suite, and he's calling me to go down, each of these pieces of this path to eventually get there. So kind of just the self-awareness of that, and then also the things that you would look for in a potential boss or leader.
Yeah, great question. So I'd say the first question would be, what kind of things or traits do you look for in a great leader or great boss, even a great company? I'd say the good thing is I'm a big morale guy. So I love high employee morale, love people that are passionate, love to come to work. But I'd say it really starts back with, are they a good human being? Do you would you say after you met them, even for 30-minute interview or an hour interview, you would want to be friends with that person and they could lead you into any battle and you would follow them? And to me, that comes with, are they humble? Are they trustworthy? Are they credible? It can't be just they're dynamic and an amazing speaker. I mean, anybody can inspire but be full of what. So do they have substance? But really, what I find is people are led well by servant leaders, going back to our faith, and people are led well by people that truly care more about you than getting the most out of you. They really care about you as a whole person, not as an asset in the company, but as a human being in the company that has a family and has needs and has stress and has other things that they're dealing with in their life. And they really generally, it's an often used term of, you want to be friends with your boss. And a lot of companies really fight that because they feel like maybe the boss gets too close to their people and they aren't objective and all that. And I will tell you, I'm a huge believer that you can be personal friends, almost like family, like with your people. You can, because if you're genuinely doing the right thing and you're being a good person, being authentic and really caring genuinely about people, meaning like if they call you on a Sunday afternoon and say, my truck broke down and I'm going to go help them out, or no, that's just one of my associates and I don't have time for them because I'm busy with my own family, then that just shows you the character of the person. So I think to me, it's character matters, getting comfortable with who they are as a person, and it's not against the rules to try to understand how they're wired, how they're motivated, what they're passionate about, what they care about outside of work. I ask every employee that comes to work for us, what do you love to do outside of work? Tell me about your family life. Tell me about your faith. I want to know the whole person. And I think good leaders do, because they know how you're wired. They know how you're motivated, and they know how to support you best, because I get the most satisfaction out of making our team, better and stronger and get promoted themselves. My goal long-term is to have 10 people that work for me today end up being CEOs of their own companies. And even though that may mean they leave me and move on to another company, I want that. I care more about them succeeding than me just keeping them, under wraps in our company. And then I think that you asked a piece about, how do you know when you're called to do something? I think that's just, discern about it, pray about it, think about it. What I'll tell you is most things, if you really want to move ahead and get promoted, and I feel like I was called to just say, I need to do the most of my God-given ability. And as a result, I need to take more risks. So I felt like risk tolerance is something that, it's not easy to just come into a company or a new situation and say, I know I don't know half of what these people that have been here longer than me know, but I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm actually willing to even sound stupid or look stupid, because I'm learning and growing, because it made me better and it made me stronger. It made me move up and it made me get noticed. So taking risk is a big thing that I see a lot of young people have a hard time doing. They want to play it safe. They want to sit in a cube, keep their head down, not get noticed, not get yelled at for anything being late or wrong. But that's a terrible way to go through a career or life. To me, you have an obligation to the Lord to fulfill your full potential. And there are ways to take risks where you're not going to get embarrassed and you're not going to get humiliated. And honestly, if you work for a company that humiliates you or embarrasses you, you work for the wrong company, period. Lock, stop. So that's why I say it really starts with find the right company, find the right culture, find the right people. We have a no jerk rule. We have a no laziness rule. That's just how we are. That's how we built the company. We don't apologize for it. We tell people it's not for everybody, but if you don't want to work hard, we're not for you. But we're going to get ahead, and we're all going to get ahead. And we're all going to do great things and amazing, epic things. If that's not what you want to sign up for, there's lots of safe places you can go work, for the government, for the post office, whatever. But if you really want to change people's lives and have your life changed and do bold things, then you do have to take some risk. But there are ways to do that in a safe environment. And part of that's just picking a really good company and a really good boss.
Amen to that. And also just a reminder for our listeners, we'll soon be taking questions from Dan live. So please be thinking of your questions to post here in the chat. And I love that idea of even just like the honesty and transparency that comes around whenever you are looking at, potentially hiring somebody and just laying that foundation, that standard from the front. I think that's definitely something we need more, in our world today. But to kind of go off that as well, when we talk about this idea of extreme ownership, I think people sometimes don't think that it's not just taking extreme ownership for my situation, but being the CEO of a company, like you're caring about your employees, from the top all the way to the bottom, and making sure that they're taken care of as well. So you're taking care of all these other people as well in their livelihood. How have you been able to kind of maintain a healthy work-life balance, even if you can say that exists within your career, but saying like, hey, I'm not just taking ownership of my situation, it's ownership of our company and every single person here. So I'm curious, how have you been able to really kind of break down that work-life balance in a healthy manner doing so?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm not the poster child for my entire career of having a healthy work-life balance. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I did a great job of that my whole time. I mean, there were times in my career when my wife and I didn't have kids yet that I was able to pour 100% of it into my job and work long hours and weekends. And I pretty much did. I was a workaholic, classic workaholic. Loved it though. Loved every minute. My wife was understanding. She was working very hard at the same time on her career and her education. So we kind of were driven by the same purpose. Once you have kids introduced, it changes a little bit and you got to adjust. Again, I wasn't the greatest at that. I mean, my tips to people would say, work is, if you're going to be successful and you're going to assume a leadership potential or position with a company, you have to know stress is going to come with it, and you have to find ways to de-stress that are what I'll call not harmful and not destructive. So things that you can just do, like going out and getting exercise, taking breaks, finding things that work for you, reading a book, or just getting out, watching sports, whatever it is for you that kind of can take your mind off of business for a while and de-stress. Certainly you need to have a very open, honest dialogue with your spouse if you are married and say, here's what my career ambitions are. Here's what I want to go do. And make sure it's a team sport. My wife is every bit as responsible for my success as I am, because every single sacrifice she made for my career has benefited us significantly. So, and our children. So, where she knew I was going to be traveling and on the road a lot of my career to get to the jobs I did, we moved a bunch early on in our career where we moved to where the jobs needed to be for the company. Had I not been willing to relocate, I probably would have never made it to the CEO chair. But early on, because I moved up very quickly. And again, so all families just need to have very honest discussions with each other about, hey, how are we going to, if we're both working, how are we going to manage the opportunities that come our way? And then and you need to collectively make those decisions. I certainly am not the poster child for a great work-life balance and the whole way at all. I think I've gotten a little better the older I've gotten. And certainly COVID, I think, taught us a lot of what's really important, which is time with our family, time with our friends, way more important than any possession, anything else, any title. So I think you just got to remember what's important, set your ground rules. I'm better now as an older worker of saying when I'm home, I'm trying to be present and be home and not always on my computer, or always on my phone, or distracted by work, or just thinking, literally just listening to my wife, but not really listening because I'm stressed still about something that happened an hour ago at the office. If I'm not truly present, it's not fair to the family, right? So even if you're there, it doesn't really matter if you're not engaged and you're not dialed in. So certainly I was not great at that at lots of times in my life. So you just have to be intentional again with that as well.
Absolutely. And I think to go off that as well too, everybody listening that's a part of YCP, our entire goal is really understanding how do we really bridge this gap between work and faith, and bring our Catholic faith into the workplace. And I'm curious, with you just taking ownership of your entire life, your current role, all the way getting to become the CEO of your company, and understanding how have you been able to balance your Catholic faith and the influence that has also with taking ownership of your career as well, and how have you been able to intertwine those? And I'm sure it hasn't just been the easiest path to get there as well, and there's been bumps along the way, but how have you been able to bridge kind of taking that extreme ownership with your Catholic faith as well?
Yeah, no, I often say that my Catholic faith and my Catholic education have more impact on my career success than my undergrad degree or my master's degree. So that Jesuit education of being a man for others led 100% to my servant leadership philosophies. Everything I do starts with a principle, like what I'll call a culture or value set, or core values that I just feel like are non-negotiable. I make it very clear to our company that infidelity is not going to be tolerated in our company. I don't care who you are. I have 11,000 people that work for me. They're, it's just not acceptable. It doesn't have to be with someone in the company or in our industry or anything. But if I know you're willing to violate that, then you're certainly willing to do anything to violate any rule of the company or anything else. So if you don't take your faith seriously or your marriage seriously, then you certainly could care less about the company or our value set and what we're trying to do. So if you want to be a principled leader and say, these are our core values as a company, and we are going to do the right thing every time. We're not going to break laws. We're not going to harm our employees or put them in harm's way. We're not going to cheat. We're not going to cut corners. We're not going to lie. We're going to be, again, hold ourselves with the utmost integrity. Then you know what? You have to be willing to get rid of people that will. And there will be, unfortunately, people all around you that will be willing to cut corners, lie, cheat, and not have integrity. And you have to give your team permission to basically make sure those employees suffer organ rejection and they're ousted out of the company. And it happens sadly all the time in our company, because I find out that so-and-so, I said, you had every chance to not, do this and have this character issue and bring it into the workplace, but you did. And I'm not going to protect you. I don't care if you're our most talented employee. Again, if your spouse can't trust you, then how the heck can we?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just another reminder, we'll soon be taking questions from Dan live. So if there are any specific questions you have for Dan, please post them in the chat. And I think to go on that as well too, Dan, I think there's so many people that fear whether it's losing where they currently stand in market share with their company, or losing a great employee, or like I said, being perceived by a specific way from the public. Was it a journey, or was it a pretty easy step for you to take, like, hey, this is the standard that we're going to set at our company. These are the specific principles and values we're going to sit on. And if, you don't want to get behind that, then, hey, this isn't the place for you. Like, did it take a while for you to get there? Or was that something that was really ingrained, with you from the Lord, saying like, hey, this is how I want you to be able to run this company. These are the sets of standards and values we're going to set. And, I'm not going to be fearful of, being perceived a certain way. We're going to run things, how the Lord wants us to run this company.
Yeah, I'd say in honesty, as a lower level employee working my way up the ranks, I didn't have that kind of conviction. I didn't feel I had not only the right, but the platform to be able to stand with that much conviction. So I relied on my team, or excuse me, my bosses or my upline. And so when I was a newer associate in the workforce, let's call it the first 15 years, I would bring those concepts forward and say, I don't feel good about this person. I don't feel good about what happened. How do you think about it? And really, it goes back to having great mentors, working for great people, and working for people that you truly feel like have similar values to yourself as well. They don't have to be Catholic. They just have to have a value set that you all have kind of a set standard. But I was fortunate to work for almost my entire career for men and women that were married to their first spouse and had deep beliefs around that. And so it didn't come up a ton, but when it did come up when I was at a lower level, I don't know if I would have had the courage to say I'm going to fire my best sales guy in my district early on in my career, because I would have been nervous. Like, I don't know if I can hit my numbers without that person, that all-star. I think that's true, and that's a natural fear. But I think that's why you have to say, okay, well, I'm going to float this up to somebody else, maybe my mentor or a peer, and get their advice, or my head of HR, and then kind of work with them. And then you get validation with other people that are like-minded, say, no, you are doing the right thing. It's going to be painful, and you may go backwards a little bit before you go forwards, but it's the right thing to do, and you're setting the right tone and the right message to attract the right talent on your team. And now, as I've gotten to a senior officer, certainly it's much easier to take that stand and say, this is how it's going to be. I firmly believe it. We've taken that stance on a lot of different issues, whether it's making sure women are treated properly in our industry, whether it's minorities. We take the same stand. I always tell our employees, every single coworker you should protect like they're your son or your daughter. And if you feel like they were treated fairly as your son or your daughter, then we're good. But if you can't say that, then we don't need that customer. We don't need that supplier. We don't need that employee. I mean, life's too short to work around people that aren't professional, aren't respectful, and don't treat people the right way. And again, it's not even getting into the deep parts of the Catholic faith and what we believe in. It's really just back treating people with the golden rule of how you want to be treated, and then just doing the right thing. But yeah, infidelity is the big one for me. I mean, everybody in our industry knows that I just don't tolerate it. And if you're going to do that, you better go work for another company.
Amen to that. I love it. I know I have a bunch of questions I could continue to ask you, but I know we have a couple audience questions that I want to make sure we get to as well. So we'll go grab a couple questions from the audience now. Sure. So from Katie, what advice do you have for middle managers to improve their skills managing their teams or increasing engagement among team members?
Yeah, great question, Katie. So I would say, again, it depends on how big your team is, but I would say the best thing you can do is really spend time one-on-one with each of the team members if you can. If you can spend some time one-on-one to getting to know your people, where they're at and what their family situation is, what stresses they're dealing with, and then also what their career ambitions are. I always tell people the best way to motivate any employee is to talk about them and their desires for a better future. Anybody that works for a paycheck is not working optimally. Anybody working to better their career to make more money for their family a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now is working with a total different motivation. So to me, when I communicate with my direct reports my entire career, and I was a middle manager for a long time, it was always about how do I help everyone that works for me get to their goals, get to their career goals, ambitions, whether that's making more per hour or more salary, or getting a promotion, or actually pivoting out of this department to go work for a new exciting department that they think has more career opportunity. But having honest, candid feedback. That doesn't mean telling everybody they're going to all get a promotion next year that you can't deliver that. It means being listening to their true desires, being honest about what you truly think you can help them get them to achieve, and then actually proactively showing them that you're willing to invest in them, meaning enroll them in a class or suggest them to be a team leader on a new project, or introduce them to another executive that might want to interview them for a career opportunity that they have that you don't have in your department. So it's just like anything else in life. Once people know you care more about them than yourself, they're all in. They'll follow you anywhere. So I think that's the biggest thing. And that just comes with, trust and humility, and knowing every single person that works for you is smarter than you. They are. Everybody in all 11,000 of our employees are smarter than me at tons of things. All I have to do is talk to them for 10 minutes and I can list 10 things they know I don't know about the company or what they do. And so having that mindset of humility, and I can learn from every other person, and I need to make sure I maximize their career opportunity, because that again brings so much joy and so much enjoyment and so much morale and better effort when people are thinking, hey, this is not a job, this is a career, and it's an opportunity to change my life from a wealth standpoint, which means I can give back, do more for the church, do other things, or get to a place in life eventually where I don't have stress of worrying about money or whatever that is.
Awesome. Thanks again for the question, Katie. And it looks like we have time for just one more question. So I'll take another one from the audience. So from Gavin, what is your advice for networking in your home parish? How to cultivate great business relationships within your community?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gavin. I think it depends on the kind of business you have. If you're in a local business, I think it's outstanding for you to network in your home parish. If you're providing goods and services to consumers or homeowners that are in the parish, then by all means, be in the bulletin, show up at all of the events at the Catholic school, and get to know other parents, get to know other people in the community. Why not? And there's nothing that there's no reason you shouldn't do that. Even recruiting from your home parish. I've interviewed plenty of people that I've met through either church or through our kids' Catholic schools and parents of those. So, I'm always looking for good people everywhere I go and every place I go. And certainly if you're looking for like-minded people that have a similar value set, it's absolutely important for you to look inside your local parish, but not certainly, keep it, regulated that too. There should be lots of places you're looking for like-minded people. It could be, and I think YCP is an amazing network that can be tapped into. And I know there's a lot of effort going on at YCP to develop a bigger career database and career openings and career opportunities. So people that are stuck can do what I said at the outset. Don't ever settle or tolerate for a bad company or a bad boss, ever. Get out of there as fast as you can and go find a great company and a great boss. They're out there. It may take you a time to find them. It may be scary for you to conceive to leave before you have another paycheck in hand, but it's worth it. Both times I left, I had to leave companies. I left one because it was a bad company and one because it was a bad boss. And it was the best thing I ever did both times. I'd probably, again, still be stuck in a miserable job had I not been willing to leave those two situations early in my career. And it led me to obviously a great outcome. So I'm a big fan of never settle for a bad company or a bad boss.
Awesome. Thanks again for the question, Gavin. And I know we're getting close to time, but we had one more great question come in that I would love to get to, and then we'll let you go, Dan. So from Pascal, what are some common pitfalls you have seen where young professionals misidentify their desires and end up working in a job that's not for them?
Yeah, I think sometimes people fall in love with a name, or they get young professionals want to please their parents more than they want to please themselves. And I want to say, Mom and Dad, I work for Amazon or Google. I can show you our stock return of SRS Distribution the last 10 years of people that have come work for us that are 20 years old or 22 years old out of college. and they made a lot more money than they worked for Google, Amazon. And I promise you, their parents never heard of SRS Distribution. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. So I'd say one of the biggest pitfalls is chasing a company out of glamour or reputation, realizing that all the people that made all their money there was back in the 90s or 2000s. And you're now one of, 400 million workers or 400,000 workers, and you'll never even meet the CEO, much less be invested in by the CEO. So understanding what size company is the right for you, what size role. And some people do the same thing with job. They fall in love with technology, or they fall in love with something marketing that they think is going to be fun and cool, but they realize that, hey, their skill set is really lends itself to accounting or finance or something different. So being honest with what you're good at, and because if you thrive and you're good at what you do, you will like it more, and then opportunities will open. So, but part of that's just, I promise you, you'll all benefit if you seek mentors that'll give you honest assessment. And even outside your company, find mentors at YCP that'll tell you, here's what I've done, here's the jobs I've had, here's the education I've had, and here's what I think I'm good at and what I like to do. And let them guide you on the right size company, the right industry, and the right department of a company to work for. And then make sure you have career upside from there.
Awesome. Thanks again for the question, Pascal, and for everybody for submitting their questions today. And also, Dan, I know we're at time, so I just wanted to thank you for your advice today and for all the input you provided as well, and just your leadership out in the world, and just for really setting a beautiful standard and really kind of setting that line in the sand for us to follow, and really just keep our Catholic faith at the forefront in a secular workforce. So we appreciate your input today and your time, and I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm only saddened I didn't have more time. I feel like I have 20 more pearls of wisdom to share, but maybe I'll come back for a cameo a year from now or something.
Amen to that. Absolutely.
Right.
In the Lord's time.